Emmanuel here with a quick take on economics. It is June or July 18th, Tuesday, 2023, and Kenyans are bracing, or perhaps I should say, anticipating a round of public protests. What is the significance of this round of protests? Well, for one, a group of local missions to a number of Western countries, right, issued a statement saying in brief that they hope that on the one hand, police brutality, and on the other hand, I think destruction of property, something like just violence on both sides would not be the rule of the day, right? They tried to say that the different groups, or the different sides to the debate of the day, should resort to peaceful negotiations. In short, at least in my perspective, they were not encouraging protests. Now, before exploring any sentiments, I would like to try and contextualize these events, right? More than 20 people have already died from previous rounds of protests. So lives have been lost. But we zoom out the aperture just a little more and we discover a few things. First of all, start in August 2022, a new administration comes into power in Kenya, right? The presidency of William Ruto is in play. And he has a list of promises that he would like to keep. Now, at this point, I will mention that my assumptions of all the actors, starting with the policymakers and the government of the day, is that to make charitable assumptions about their intentions, right, in general, and believe that they do want to perhaps do what is good for the public, right? Now, so this president comes into power and he inherits an economy battered by global, let's say, a global downturn, right? The economic conditions are dire, right? For example, inflation. Inflation was already rising and continues to rise. He's in a very tight fiscal space. 10 years ago, about 2013, the public debt was at about $13 billion. By the time the new president comes into office, it is at just about $60 billion, right? Very huge change. Ballooning debt. He has a tight fiscal space. Some of the actions that he takes include taking away fuel subsidies, and then he attempts to push through Parliament a finance bill that would raise taxes considerably. It includes housing levy among other taxes, but the bottom line is it's going to increase, right? This is just speaking mathematically. What Kenyans take home would be reduced as taxes rise, right? Now, protests rocked the country, or perhaps I should say that many Kenyans were not too pleased about the impending change to their fortunes, right? And they took to the streets. Now, this is a huge number of Kenyans. We're talking about the latest protest just last week, maybe just under 1 million people, 600,000 thereabouts from different towns. So protests were not centered around the capital, but all over the country, right? So what does that mean? That means that at least one interpretation would be that there is a general discontent, right? People are not pleased about this finance bill. The group of politicians who, by some measure, are the opposition have taken the lead in these protests. Now, again, charitable assumptions, right? Let's go to the law. The Constitution actually allows for people to protest, right? And they don't need to give a warning or to ask for permission. They could go right to the street and protest as long as they are unarmed, right? You're not supposed to show up to a protest with weapons in hand. And certainly the destruction of property, public or private, is always illegal, whether or not there are protests being carried out, right? You can be prosecuted by the law for basically destroying public or private property. So these two things, in my view, should not be in question. One may disagree with the platforms of any protesters, but in a democratic nation, right, the state should not withhold the public goods of security to those who seek to protest, right? And the whole point of a democracy is the public is allowed the right to air their perspectives, to say what they think, to bring out the truth, to debate, right? And ideally, a debate should be based on facts, on truth, right? We should have some facts that we can agree on. But ultimately, at question today is the right to protest, protected by the Constitution. And again, the public deserve, and actually are constitutionally mandated to receive, the public goods of security. So, in all, to add one more perspective, one more point, it is not the responsibility, or rather, the Constitution does not anticipate that the public or the state or any officials can scuttle the right to protest based on, say, ideas like the economy must continue running. No. The right to protest is always in play, irrespective of any individual's or any person's views, sentiments, or arguments, right? Again, within the law. I've been Emmanuel, asking questions. Cheers.